Look, I like my Rolls-Royce, but it's just not big or luxurious enough for me. If you like your luxury with a side of, well, luxury, then this might just be the niche proposition you've been looking for. It's the Rolls-Royce Ghost Extended. And yes, you guessed it, it's a long wheelbase version of Rolls's famed swanky sedan. There's only one of these in Australia, and we're the lucky ones who get to spend a day with it. And trust me when I tell you, I've never driven more carefully. The extended version of the Ghost starts at a whopping $740,000 before on-road costs, or about the same price as 30 Toyota Corollas. While it looks like a gentle giant, there's a booming 6.75 litre twin-turbo V12 engine under the bonnet, producing a maximum of 420 kilowatts of power and 850 newton meters of torque. It also offers all-wheel drive and all-wheel steering for added sure-footedness. To learn more about this incredibly unique car, we chatted to Christopher Hope, brand manager for Rolls-Royce Motor Cars Melbourne, to see what people can expect from the ownership experience.
To date, there's physically one, the one you're about to take out today. Well, it starts the morning of, at about 8 o'clock, I'll send a text message saying no more sleeps. And I know it's a bit cliche, but people love it. When they arrive in the showroom, we'll either have champagne or coffee or tea or whatever's appropriate. 9 times out of 10 there's tears, and it's not just from me, it's from the new owner getting their car, and they're very excited. So, quietness, the driver feel, the serenity, the comfort, the style, just it's the most beautiful place to be and to drive. When I tell people, please sit in the car but first take your shoes off, and they think I'm an idiot. They put their feet into the lambs-wool and go, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. Little boys waving at me going, cool, and it's like, oh. Older people saluting me, and then people walk up to me and say, my grandfather used to have one of these many years ago, or I'm on a journey, I will have one of these one day. And I'll say, well, I hope you do. It's lovely.
This car is in the shade called Bohemian Red, although I'd argue there's not too much bohemian about cruising around the streets in a car that costs the same as a house. Of course, as its name suggests, the Ghost Extended has been extended by 17 centimetres, which means Rolls claims it now has more backseat legroom than any other car in its class. It also means it now measures over 5.7 metres long, but as you can see, it's still managed to maintain its elegant dimensions. Now come with me and we'll take a closer look at some of the exterior details. Now, the luxury experience starts, of course, with the key, which has leather on the back that matches the leather you choose for the interior of your car. Head on over to the car itself, and we have the iconic Spirit of Ecstasy on the front here. That stows away when the car is locked to make sure there's no damage possible. Buyers can also opt for what Rolls-Royce calls effortless doors, which offer assistance when you're opening them to relieve you of the heavy weight, and can be automatically closed from the inside or outside with the push of a button. Our car also features 21-inch twin-spoke, part-polished wheels and chrome-plated visible exhausts. Other premium features such as the Serenity seating, picnic tables and rear massage seats on the interior bring this example's as-tested price to $992,784 before on-road costs. But it's best if you don't think about that too much before you get behind the wheel. Now, before I get started, let me just quickly close my door. Look, Mum, no hands. Now I'm inside the front seat of the Ghost Extended, obviously. This one is finished in what's called cashmere grey and black trim, and you'll notice as well it's got some stitching on the seats that matches the exterior colour of the car, which is a lovely touch. This one's optioned with the Starliner roof. What I didn't realise is while it's incredibly beautiful to have this constellation up here, you can also have it personalised. So if you have a favourite constellation, you can have that put into the roof. Otherwise, you can also option a sunroof if you so choose. Basically everything in here is customisable, so how the dash appears can be changed. If you want something inlaid into the wood paneling, if you choose to go with that, you can do that as well. The sky's the limit, really, to borrow an overused phrase there. However, the infotainment system is very modern and will be familiar to BMW drivers. down to the wireless CarPlay. I just didn't think in my mind that something like a Rolls-Royce could have something as modern as wireless CarPlay. Call me silly, but it does, and it's got all your regular connectivity that you'll be requiring as well. One of my favorite things is that the climate control, which is dual zone naturally, has a setting on it called soft for the fan controls, and that is what it sounds like. It's a really nice soft fan setting that just emits the right amount of air. It keeps you cool, but without that blasting noise and that kind of blasting sensation on your face. So if you're someone who likes to keep cool but without it being too obvious, that's a really nice touch that I didn't quite expect. Alrighty, so I'm just about to hit the road in the Ghost Extended, and one of the things I didn't know about Rolls-Royces is that much like Mercedes-Benz cars, the gear selector is mounted on the steering wheel on a stalk here, but unlike Mercedes-Benz cars, which I find can be quite easy to accidentally pop into neutral if you forget that your indicator is not on the right-hand side, this requires you to pull the indicator stalk or the stalk forward in order to shift gears. So it's got a little bit less room for error, which is really nice. So now I've popped that into drive, I'm going to hit the road. Obviously, one of the big draw cards of this car and of the Rolls-Royce brand in general is that it purports to be one of the most comfortable rides out there, and that is certainly the case. It's incredibly smooth, it cancels out speed bumps beautifully, and any rough edges going over cobblestones, things like that, you're not going to feel it. You might hear the thunk of yourself going over these bumps and irregularities, but you're not going to be disturbed in the cabin, which is really nice. On top of that, whilst there's a nice engine startup note when you turn the car on, that's kind of the last you hear of the engine. It's incredibly quiet. They've made a great effort to basically stop any of that noise from reaching you, despite it being a huge twin turbo V12 under the bonnet. You're not going to hear that. So it's got plenty of guts, plenty of power, but none of the sound to go along with that, none of the sound effects. Something that's quite interesting about the steering in this car is that it's incredibly light, and when I first got into it, I had a bit of a tendency to kind of oversteer and over maneuver and put too much input in, because it does feel like a really large car, so it feels somewhat bizarre to have such a light steering feel. But one of the things that the dealer actually told me is that it basically will get you there and you need to trust in the steering. And once I eased back on that and just decided to turn the wheel a little bit less, I did notice that it was very direct in getting me where I needed to go. It just takes some getting used to, I think. So I'm just going to do a quick U-turn here, and the Ghost Extended actually has a 13.6 metre turning circle. So whilst that may sound like a fair bit, I'm actually quite impressed with how it handles for a car of its size, given it's nearly 6 metres long. And I have had to do a bit of a 3-point turn in this instance, but it's really manoeuvrable steering and it's really easy to manage in smaller streets despite being a bigger car. So Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW, and if you are a BMW driver, you will find a lot of the interface quite familiar. One of the things I like about the Rolls is that while it's a really classic brand with a lot of heritage, all the digital displays and infotainment feel really up to date and premium. One of the things I really love is if you keep your satellite navigation up on this main screen here on Map, it actually gives you kind of a live feed of the different buildings around you. It looks a little bit like Legoland, and it's just a really nice touch, a bit of a point of interest as well while you're driving. So while the actual steering wheel feel is quite light, this actually has 4-wheel steering. So once your driving gets more dynamic, you'll sense that accuracy and that engagement, and it also makes just maneuvering around town a little bit easier. Although you can feel all that accessible power lingering under the surface, the way it's delivered through the 8-speed auto is so smooth and linear you can transition from 60 kilometers an hour to 100 kilometers an hour in the blink of an eye. Out on the freeway, it feels as though the world is on mute. While you can hear the faint whooshing noise of passing cars, everything else is demurred, from the vibration of the engine, to tyre noise, to even the exhaust when you accelerate. It's virtually imperceptible to the untrained ear. I found the steering became more intuitive at higher speeds, but at lower speeds it can feel a bit vague. That does go away to masking the sheer length of the car around town, however, and you might be grateful. Now, one of the main reasons you'd actually buy a Ghost Extended is, of course, for this massive back seat. And I do have plenty of legroom, and it's actually so far to reach the seat in front that it's a little bit annoying. but I'm not going to complain because I have so much room and so many luxury accoutrements, including obviously seat heating. I can control whether or not the seats recline, whether I have a footrest with these controls down here. On top of that, I've got all my climate controls accessible via the center console, and I've actually got these screens as well, which can be lowered by the push of a button. There's one on the back of each seat. They've got all your infotainment here that you need and a little tray table in case you want to have a little snack as well. And finally, if I get a little bit thirsty while I'm out on the road being driven around, there's always this, a cooled champagne fridge complete with champagne, which can be subbed out for a whiskey fridge if you're not really into bubbles. So all the important stuff has been thought of in this car, but this means nothing if it's not a comfortable ride on the road. So thankfully, I have my trusty colleague Emma here, and she's going to take me for a spin. I'm just going to lie back, recline, and enjoy the surrounds of Melbourne from the comfort of the Ghost Extended. Emma's got the driving seat in her regular driver's position, and she's about 173 centimeters tall. I'm about 178 centimeters tall, and I have plenty of room here. So it certainly is a very spacious back seat. I will say, however, that whilst the headroom is great, it's not kind of the best headroom I've ever had in a back seat. And I think possibly the fact that the ceiling is black and you've got these kind of darker window covers as well, it does feel a little bit more closed in, which is nice and cozy. But if you're someone who likes an airy feel to your back seat, this does feel a little bit darker. But then again, I won't complain because the seats are very comfortable, particularly the headrests. They're extremely cushy. As I mentioned before, it's a bit of a reach to this screen on the back seat. It is a touch screen, so you can use it like that. However, because it's a bit of a stretch, I prefer to use this dial down here. And through this, I can access absolutely everything. Applications, I've got information on the car, I can control the music, all that kind of thing. So if you really are a backseat driver in the truest sense of the word, you do have that sense of control. Now, if you do have kids, there's plenty to keep them entertained, including a DVD player, and Rolls has given me Planet Earth 2 for the day, so I can pop that in and sit back and relax and enjoy the dulcet tones of David Attenborough. But as well, you've got ISOFIX points, so if you have young kids, you can actually fit 2 child seats back here. Naturally, the boot on the Ghost is truly capacious at 500 litres, although I highly doubt its owners do their own Bunnings runs. Somewhat unfortunately for me, I could grow very accustomed to the Rolls-Royce lifestyle. And with the added legroom in the back of the Ghost Extended, it's just as good for passengers as it is for the lucky driver. Now, does anyone have a spare $740,000 they could lend me? And possibly a bit extra for the insurance?